Hello everyone. So in this session, we are going to talk about a very, it's not, it's a definitely different topic. Something which we usually don't give much emphasis on how to document your APIs. Uh, so I have observed, I have read many API documentation, external and internal. So basically, external means something like the API vendors which they are providing and and internal documentation also. And yeah, so I always get this problem like understanding this API, like what they legally want me to queue as a request so that it works properly. And yeah, most of the time APIs work fine. There is no issue. But there are some instances which I have uh, seen where this API is working very well. And you have said something, but it does something different. All right, so let's start and see like what are the moments I have seen. Before that, let's see what do we mean by an API. So in a layman term or a simple term, I can say uh, API is like an interface or the entry point to an application where external machines like phone, your web browser, basically your laptop computation, you can say your anything. It can be anything. Connects to your server, uh, yeah, over a HTTP over a protocol and connects to your service, and it interact with it. It sends a request, you get something as a reply. So yeah, that's what basically API enable you to between client and server. Okay, so now let's see like what are the popular tools in 2015, because now it's been around 7 years now. So just thought like to have some kind of difference. So if you see in 2015 or something around that year, um, there were not many tools available for API documentation or testing. So we had a limited choices, and if you see most of the people's, they just majority, if you see they use either Word or Confluence to document their API and also share the API specification with other team, which is fine as long as we are following some what I say uh, predefined template for sharing, which is fine. There is nothing wrong with it. Some also use API Blueprint, Swagger. They were the control tools at the time, and they were popular also. You could have used this also, but not many were using. There might be good, not all of them. I mean, still not all big enterprise were using this tool, and they were still using this tool, either Confluence or Word, or some maybe using Swagger at a time. API Blueprint can be, yeah. And the problem, I mean, these two tools are really good, but if you see these two tools, Word and Confluence, they are simply just uh, a storage where you just go and store your content. Now in 2022, that's today, in this year, we have a lot of tools to deal with API, like Postman. If you see, you can query your API, you can do some kind of testing with it. Yeah, there are many tools like Swagger is still available today also. It has a lot of good options now. You can do a lot of things with your API testing, documentation, and all. Now, this Filipino, they just don't. I mean, they have done a lot of things for us where we just simply have to add dependency and add few configuration, and boom, it works very fine. I mean, you can get the template and all. Okay, so now you might be wondering, like, why am I talking about API tools? What is the point? Why am I talking about documentation? Okay, the thing is, I mean, just wanted to show here is like we have this many tools. Even in 2015 also we had good tools. In 2022 also we have a lot of tools. Then why still today I'm still uh, facing a trouble understanding API? I mean, why? If a lot of things were taken care by these tools, then why am I still not able to understand it? The thing is like not one reason we like not everyone is adopting this tool, which is fair. Uh, okay, I mean it's fine, but I still don't see a reason that could be the valid reason because if you see some tools like Postman, if you see it is an external tool, you can easily configure and test it, and then still why still we are getting the thing is like, and this is something what really troubled me. Like if you're not, why we are not giving more emphasis to it. I mean, this tool have really done a great job of uh, uh, I mean, most of the heavy lifting for the documentation testing is taken care by the tool itself. You just have to configure a few things and it works. So yeah, I will just leave this question to you. I mean, it's still open question. I don't understand. So let me just share my few instance. I mean, to find four instance where poor documentation have really troubled me a lot. Yeah. So one such instance is like this is like called account details. So the thing is like this API basically used to call account details of the customer. Now from the contract, it's clearly says like account ID has to be required and sorry, customer ID has to be required and account ID need to be optional. Okay, it looks straightforward. I mean, I just give only two. I mean, there's only two values in the contract. Looks good. Nothing magic. I mean, nothing complex. So I just, I mean, at a time I just accidentally missed. I mean, uh, I just missed to add customer ID and just added only account ID, and API was still working. I was just like, sorry, did I miss the documentation? So I just gone back again and saw, okay, documentation still shows it's mandatory and it is still working. I mean, it shouldn't be working right if I'm missing a field, since it's a mandatory field. And later on, I realize, I don't know, even I'm still not sure like why it is being added away because documentation is it is mandatory. I don't know, maybe if I got change, but developer missed to uh, update documentation because even I'm not sure because it's an old documentation. So many might have observed this thing. I don't know. I don't care about updating it. All right, that's fine. Okay, Praveen. I understand. Then what's next? So actually, it's not the customer ID, but there's a lot of more thing happening behind the scenes. Uh, yeah, let me just give you second problem that Pay has. It says it also returns, secondly, it also returns other resources which have matching account ID. Okay, let me just see. It also return other resources which has matching account IDs, but different customer IDs. So basically, there is this scenario where you you just I mean, if you just give uh, I mean, based on what where my understanding is, if I'm just explicitly giving you my account ID and customer ID, or at least customer ID, I should only get details for that particular customer. But the problem is this API gives me a lot of details than what is asked for. It gives me uh, account details of this customer plus other customer who are basically linked to that account as a dependent, you can say. But that is not mentioned anywhere in the documentation. I mean, from the API itself, I see it should be this way. But my convention was, I mean, there is something different. And API doesn't talk about those things. I mean, if the name also doesn't say anything. Okay, um, it's fine. What's the problem? If you're getting results. Yeah, the problem is like, even though we are returning lot of uh, account IDs, sorry, customer IDs, sorry, customer details, there is still no way to know like which object belong to my request for customer ID because there is no field. Hold on. If there is no field, then what is the point of sending in the first place? I mean, I asked for this customer, you're giving me a lot of time. Then who belongs to this ID? I don't know. And so to make it work, I have to make another API call to some different database where I get some Aadhaar number, PAN number, and then I have to match the uh, some kind of code I have to write where I match whether it matches the name or not to some extent, and the PAN is matching or not, Aadhaar is matching or not. Then I was like, why is this designed this way? I mean, what is the point of having this API if I have to call two API to just get one details? And yeah, this is very bad design. I mean, this is something not documented. So initially, I had a different view towards this API, but with time, I just came to know a lot and lot of things. Like this API is doing a lot of things than what it should be doing. Yeah. So now, what could have been done differently? Well, one thing I can say is like make your documentation clear. At least if you know like there are a lot of scenarios happening behind the this regular API, make sure to have those scenarios listed with the example. And if you know, like maybe during development it was mandatory, but afterward it became optional. That just make sure to build documentation also because it doesn't make sense, right? You wrote one word, but it confuses the other team because they might be thinking like I might be doing something wrong, right? And also, if you're going to return multiple customer details, at least give me a way to identify like this is one belongs to me, so kind of like a customer ID in my example. And I believe it's good to have some process where your documentation get reviewed. Uh, yeah, because this is not something I really like about it. Now, let's say you may be saying, Praveen, that a lot of things moving, not possible for a team to manage. I think we can do different way. Like I see, like most of the teams, postman collection were shared as a common way to share the API request and the payload. Or something. Even if we make sure like that is updated, at least I will get the working collection where I know like this is how it works, and there you could cover different AP, requests for different scenarios. That will be easy for me. I mean, I might have to. I don't have to look the documentation that often. Then the request will be much clearer. So yeah. Okay. Now next is the suspension details API. Okay, this is a very interesting instance. So what happened is like it was actually a long back then. I mean, it's implemented long back, and during migration of this API, everyone had this um, view like, okay, this API is a special detail, so it will give me whether the customer ID is suspended or not. Yeah. So we were just thinking, okay, so it's named that way. It will be your suspicion details. So routine migration, it were added as a suspension details in the new service also by migration. And during review, it turned out that this API is actually not suspension because but it's account details. So yeah, I mean, okay, so this API is this, but you're making that. And when we check the uh, documentation, actually documentation also says suspension details. I mean, since it's a I mean, it's actually didn't document account detail, then why do you actually suspension details? It doesn't make sense. Since that was like that previously, it was implemented in the service of the same way, even though that's just a kind of, you can say, um, uh, interface which were created in the service, something like anti-corruption layer. But that layer also had this misunderstanding. I mean, yeah, it could have been on account details. So, I mean, because of the bad naming, it just created more confusion. The confusion, what happens like, um, that DP was already there in the service, so it just like some small tweaking were needed, and one additional endpoint were needed to return the all the details. But yeah, uh, because the migration wanted it to be reusable, but since it was very specifically named, so we just thought like how to add it. But yeah, I mean, the overall thing is like, it was a bad naming. It got extended because initially it was perceived as suspension, but due to utilization of that thing, so we have to refactor it and change it back. Of course, that's messy. So, what could have been improved here? One thing is like, let us make the documentation clear, use the proper naming, and at least mention it like, if the thing is like, even though it is called suspension details, we were thinking, okay, it will only give me suspension details. So we thought like, whatever details we're using, it will be about all the um, suspended accounts. The thing is, it is literally all the active and not active account also. And yeah, I mean, basically, this is the accounting. There is nothing like suspension in the field at all. So yeah. And third is money transfer API. Hmm. So actually, this is very critical if I say. So what happens like, this is the API which probably used to send money from Intel account to external account, basically to the customer. Now, the thing is here, API has some markets material, but if I just skip it or put some empty values or null value, it's still working. I was like, seriously, like, why it is taking acceptable value in the first place with mandatory. And I was like, no, I don't have the confidence, like, how is a place working in the first place? And then there is this two fields in the API called debtors and credit account. It has all the field markers option. Okay, really? I mean, why all the field has to be okay? I mean, what is the point of calling the API when there is no W and no claim, you're still accepting it, right? When even though you may feel later on, but then why to accept in the first place at all? Such kind of request. It is unnecessary, right? Yeah, so this is something very weird because that's not something I was expecting. I mean, if you see from a business point of view, there has to be someone, some account from where the money has to be pulled out, and some account where it has to be credited, right? Yeah, and there's other problem like this API. In the name of adding encryption, they make a lot of things like change some fields, change some fields, and yeah, and many fields were renamed. So yeah, what could have been better? then what would have been improved here? One thing is like we should only we should mark the fields mandatory, uh, which is important, not keep it optional, and have some kind of validation done. I mean, people will not complain because this is something who is going to implement the API has to be clear with it. And let's have some multiple review process. Don't blindly copy paste because I have seen like this migration, I mean, this API which got upgraded. During the talk, we just came to realize like the documentation which were updated or provided, it was blindly copy pasted. It even updated what fields were new and updated. They just simply just copy paste from the email and said, okay, this is the same thing. Even, yeah, even even the name were same, but yeah, it were a lot. Fourth instance, authentication factor API. So this is something been implemented a long back. So everything was looking fine. Such as the initial default values were used for function ID. So it's basically a kind of required values which is used when OTPs are being validated. So the problem appeared is like after 8 months, like when the folks push small change in or for the protocol, and suddenly someone started failing. We were confused, like what could have broken the OTP? It's just a protocol update. Nothing what changed. We changed our DB, we updated the code, and why is it is failing? We were not able to figure out anything at all. And later for debugging, having some calls with the team, we realized that functionality has to be passed while making OTP calls or sending the OTP. And when we checked, we realized like those files were not sent before also, like when it was implemented. And we was like, why the API was working if it was required and yeah, I mean, we were thinking like, why it was working at that time with CPI. Now, later on, we realize it just like internally it by default to something and it's some default message template, some default OTP. So because of that, it was working, and people were thinking like, okay, we don't have to change anything at all. The problem came when we wanted to update the template, and that's what the folks try to update. And during the template update, these problems came in after 8 months. And then we realized, okay, functionality has to be same. Uh, but I mean, if that is something what the business logic says, like functionality has to be same, okay, it's fine. Functionality has to be different. But I was just, I mean, this is something I also came to realize when I'm just going to, I was just somewhat checking the code. I was expecting like it should fail in the first place itself. Why don't you let the caller or the caller decide like what value he want to use instead of using the default value? I mean, initially it was implemented that way, and then we thought like, okay, it will work right now. We just update the product code in DB, and here it will be working. And we changed the function ID at one place, and we thought like, okay, it will work because we changed in the DB only. That's what how it used to be there. But it didn't gone that way. I mean, at one place it is working differently, another place it is working again differently. So yeah, I mean, this is a very big, messy, and tricky problems which came in. It all because it could have been solved in first place if only the API accepts all the required field and make it integrate instead of using the optional. So yeah, this is one of the problem we found. So what could have been? We could have documented the missing important details, which could be easily missed, like here in this case. It could be added either on the Jira story or the if I want to could have been updated. I don't know like why, what is the reason at the time for not updating it. But other pages could have been like We can have the working personal collection for sending and receiving, or in the documentation, the story would have been implemented or said like, okay, we have to add. I mean, it is the implementation, it is this confusion basically. It created this mess. And it took us around a week just to figure out, around a week to figure out the problem because we have to debug whole journey, every component to understand like at what point it is getting broken, why it is behaving. So this is a simple thing cost us 7 days to debug and realize this problem, which could have been avoided only if we um, done this thing right way in the first place. Yeah. So I would say Praveen is there any better way to manage this? I don't know, to be frank. But I can share like something what worked for me, or I mean, what I have like I have seen in multiple teams, like people use Postman to automate most of the stuff, like testing the API, having the API connection in one place, and sharing with the others so that they can test it. We can add our own testing to see like how it goes. Now there is Swagger UI also I really like because it creates a nice documentation templates, which is something we already want instead of reading those uh, 15, 20, a big Word document where you don't know which things you want to focus more on. It also gives you a capability to do a live testing also. So I really like Swagger UI also in that sense. It creates the basic templates automatically, and even now also this tool will only work only if you implement the code on track basically properly. Only then this tool will be meaningful. And here's an example of how server UI can be added in this question. You just have to add this dependency and context file variable in your properties, and then yeah, it works. And this is how it looks like a beautiful way. It will be a private option where you can go and try out. You will see it says like what are the what value to accept and how it looks like. What is key user applies that has to be mandatory. Some are optional, some are some must. This is what it output looks like. Yeah, that's all on the session.